Good morning once again, and welcome to all you wonderful viewers of the Universal Mentors Association. It has been a pleasure sharing our experience with all you wonderful listeners throughout the pandemic, now with the BFSI sector. Without further ado, let's welcome our first panel on board. It is, we've all been talking about digitalization of, the complete sector, with the complete BFSI sector. But, with digitization, I think there is another word that is directly associated, and that is data. And the modernization of data is really, really important. So, the first panel discussion that we're going to discuss on today would talk about data modernization and migration, a strategic approach towards a digital transformation, which is very, very important. Without further ado, I would like to welcome all the wonderful speakers alongside the moderator of the event of this amazing panel discussion, Mr. S.V. Sundar Krishnan, who is the Chief Risk Officer, Reliance Nippon Life Insurance Company. Welcome,
Good morning
sir.
and hello.
Mr. Abe Johri, Digital Strategy, ICICI Bank. Uh, Mr. Jagdish Narayanan, who's the CIO of Reliance Jio Payments Bank. He'll be joining us in quite some time. Uh, we have Mr. Pawan Chawla, who's the CISO and DPO of the Future Generally India Life Insurance. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us for our first digital BFSI virtual summit. And we hope this is the last virtual summit in the BFSI sector that we host. And hopefully, pandemic be kind to us from now on, so that we could start having our physical events very, very soon. Sir, without further ado, I think the stalwart of the panel that we have today, we are going live on Facebook. We are already live on Facebook and YouTube. So, would request all the listeners, if you have any questions, you can post directly there, and our team will be there to, share the questions to our wonderful panel. So, without further ado, Sundar sir, I request you with folded hands to please take this session away. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gulati, and thank you, the organizers, for selecting such a wonderful topic, which is data modernization and data migration challenges and modernization challenges. BFSI is faced with humongous data challenges in the last 6 or 7 years. Most of the organizations have launched digital transformation, and digital transformation requires addressing data modernization and migration needs. As per Forrester Consulting, uh, the firms face challenge at every stage at data modernization process. You could have a quality of data challenge, you could have an employee talent, data science talent issue, you could have speed of change to open source or other such uh, architecture, maintenance, again upgrade, support, skills to implement the change. So these are some of the challenges, and the need, of course, is to address the customer needs. Most customers would want companies to afford them with latest data, modernized data, let, and little challenges in accessing data. A customer doesn't want to be swiping or accessing one point of contact after another, and this is one of the factors that was there a decade back, but most companies are addressing this, and the digital transformation has transformed this further. With us, we have a wonderful experts to share their wisdom, knowledge, and we have a banker from ICC Bank. uh, One sec. Yep. So we have Mr. Jore from ICC Bank and Mr. Chabla from Future Generali Life Insurance. So first question to the banker, Mr. Jore. Uh, if you can give an introduction of the topic and also probably one experience that you have had on data migration or data modernization, that would be nice of you.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's it's a very wide topic, but fortunately, it's something that we all live in on a day-to-day basis. So let me just try and structure my thoughts. Yeah, the first paradigm really is that we are moving away from what was called a bank of applications or a company of applications to a bank of platforms. Yeah, which means that a lot of functionality which was actually incorporated and encapsulated in software, which then access data to produce things of value. Yeah. Now that is moving to what is now called a platform, and platform again, is something that is continuously enriched by a whole host of third parties, and therefore, the business model really is that there is an innovation that goes nonstop. Yeah. So that's the first paradigm change, is that you move away from a bank of applications to bank of platforms. Yeah. The second paradigm, which is actually a more powerful one, is that you also move away from applications being the first citizen to data being the first citizen. Yeah. Now, what does that mean? It means that applications and logic is actually now written on the fly. What is most important is the piece of data that it acts on. Yeah. So how does it add value to data which is actually then stored in appropriate repositories? Yeah. So these are two paradigms that are underway. Yeah. Now, when we talk about data modernization, the first thing is, how do we get all of the data that we have, and we have structured data, we have unstructured data, we have streaming data, we have event data. How does all of that come together? And initially the thing was a data lake, pretty much on the same lines of a data warehouse as a monolithic concept. And now you have actually a series of lakes actually just put together for a common objective. Yeah. The important point here is getting it architected right. Yeah. And therefore, there are various layers within this data platform, where all the data is supposed to be kept. Yeah. So at the very bottom, obviously you need data supply pipelines, which actually suck up data from anywhere where data is being generated. So you could have structured data in your core systems. You could have streaming data, which is actually coming from your browsers and apps, or your federated, embedded banking sets, from your ATMs, from your kiosks. They're all streaming in. So the first thing is to have supply pipelines that gets it at an appropriate degree of relevance. Yeah. That's the first step. Yeah. Get the supply pipeline right. The next step is actually then to store all the raw data, and obviously structured data is easy to store. Streaming data needs a separate set. So that's the first layer. Yeah. The second layer above that is then you have to start adding meaning to all of the stuff. So there is cleansing of data, there is attachment of metadata to the data. So there's data about data, and then there's classifiers, and there is this whole stuff. So you have data in a form that can actually be used. Yeah. Then there is a layer above that, which says that, okay, you have all of this data, you structured data, you have streaming data, unstructured data. Now, explore this, discover this, wrangle with this. Yeah. Which is when you start getting into these classic marts, which can actually pull together relevant data so that they can be used. Then you have the consumption sets. Yeah. And some of the plain vanilla consumption is classic reports, BI, business intelligence kind of a set. And there's enough and more technology that does that extremely well. And then there are consumers of the data themselves. Your browser and app has sent you data, but the browser and app now want cleansed and data with a lot of intelligence back to them. Yeah. So you then have created this entire structure, and then there's some horizontals which are running across. Yeah. You need to have security, because obviously you put all your data in one place. That's the easiest place where you can actually get broken into. So you have this horizontal around security and scalability. Then you also have this concept of master data. Yeah. Obviously, the most important data is your own customer data, where you have a complete customer 360. But then you also have a lot of reference data, right? Your PIN codes, your cities, your products, your partners, your suppliers. Yeah, all of that is also structured data, which is actually available as separate from the data lake, as a part of an MDM. And when you get all of this architecture put together, you actually have a modern data platform. And then, it is up to the chef to actually use the right recipe, because all the ingredients are there properly to just take care of it. Yeah. So I would say The first step in modernization is just get the architecture right, get the design right, and then execute on it. Yeah. Enough said. Back to you, Sundar.
Thanks. I remember when we had to use analytics for risk management. We had unstructured data and so many forms of data on customers, their occupation, their places, their way they buy insurance policies, and we used SAS to do some regression analysis on data to see patterns. And when we did backtesting on these patterns, it produced humongous results in terms of analytics. And then we modernized the data. I'll use the OLAP, MART, and smartly uh, upscale the benefits of the modernization. It was humongous. If I spend 60 lakhs, I used to save about 40, 50 crores per year. And this was 60 lakhs is on the investigation cost, which we have to incur on the data that we unstructure or out of the SAS technology using something like 36 combos of data. So data can be really wonderful and produces humongous results in BFSI. We now move on to Mr. Chabla from Future Life Insurance. What is your take on data modernization?
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Johri for setting up the tone, and he has actually briefed both the points very efficiently. I would say very informatively in structuring the data, what is there in the organization, and specifically when he mentioned about shift of infrastructure from of an organization from an application to more on analytical of the data which the organization has. Now, another aspect I like to complement that and add a third point to it on the data uh, framework, which needs to be built in within the organization. Because once you identify what kind of data you are dealing with and you put a right structure to it, put it in a data lake, and use various platforms to structure that out to give you a meaningful result, it is equally important at that point of time to define a framework for the organization as well, to define that who should have access to what kind of data. Uh, Specifically to the need at to a level where people should get only access to data basis their job profile and what they are required to have to complete their day-to-day functioning. All irrelevant data have to be removed from there. Otherwise, we see that a lot of hacks are happening, and there are data leakages which are happening across the globe. It will become it. It is a matter of concern for every organization. It will continue to be a matter of concerns until and unless there is a stringent framework which has been implemented, adopted by an organization, and have been thoroughly audited over a period of time, and to see a continuous improvement in the defined framework and the methodology adopted by the organization. So that is, my take would be that, Krishanji, on this particular point.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, frameworks are very important, and so is the discipline in utilizing them. So we go back to Mr. Johri. I think Mr. From the expert from GOS and joined yet. What are the challenges that you may face while you want to modernize data?
Yeah. I think the supply pipelines is actually the easier job. Sucking out all the data and putting it into a raw data format is not that difficult. The difficult part is adding meaning to it. Yeah. So, and let's take the tasks that follow. Step by step. Yeah. The first step really is making sense of the data. Yeah, which means that you need to have a glossary. You need to be profiling, and the same piece of data gets called by different names. Yeah. So there is a little bit of standardization of what do you mean when you say a customer. Yeah. Do you want to qualify? What do you mean when you say a location? What do you mean by when you say that it is a bank branch? Will an agent carrying a tablet also be equivalent to a branch? Yeah. So those are the first kind of questions. So you need to have this whole profiling and glossary piece, worked out extremely well. So that's a challenge. Yeah. The second piece, and that's as dicey, is that Especially for old successful banks such as ours, we have accumulated data over a period of time, and obviously progressively we have kept improving, how we cleanse the data. Uh, but to go back to history and make sure that the entire data stack is end to end of the same quality is another issue, and that's especially with historic data. And then there is a very interesting thing, especially in India, is when you talk about reference data, and let me just take a very simple example of states. Yeah, we did not have Andhra and Telangana as two separate states, right? And the bank existed before that. Yeah. So what happens is, the location that you called a certain thing has changed. So while the old data was correct, it is no longer as useful as it was when they were not two states. Yeah. So there is a little bit of adding some more layers of correctness to the entire set. Yeah. And then that's especially true of reference data, because you can't control the outside environment. So that's difficult as well. So that's really the second set of challenges. The third set of challenges, and I would say is singly the biggest one, is your entire analytics and AI inventory that you want to put across. Yeah, which means that you got data, and now you got to refine your logic as to how you're going to use it. Yeah, which means you got to develop it, you got to test it, you got to validate it, you got to monitor the model performance over a period of time, and also you have to productionize it. Yeah, I mean, beyond a time, sometimes it's better to be vaguely right than precisely wrong. If I may use that part. Yeah. So therefore, you got to do a lot of feature engineering. You got to productionize the entire model. Yeah. So that's another challenge. And then there is the last piece of challenge which we haven't really encountered, which is really that you got to drive usage. Yeah, you got so much of goodness, but finally, the data is as good as the data that's actually going to be used by the end user. Yeah. So I mean, you might develop the best, kind of AI models, but the recommendations are not being followed. It won't create value. Yeah. So there is a lot of stuff around how do you drive usage. Yeah. I mean, some of the folks would just actually want physical analog reports on the desks every morning. Some of the guys would want summary data on a mail. Some of the guys would want to explore that whole data themselves. Yeah. So you got to then make sure that the capability is driven by how adoption will happen. And again, the important point here is to just make sure that the initial use cases, are very, very successful, and that drives enthusiasm and adoption over the enterprise. Yeah. So when you're looking at an intelligent enterprise, adoption is a very, very important point. You can have supply side done absolutely right. All the stuff that I talked about previously. But the demand for the new set has to be used well. Yeah. I mean, otherwise you're back to just actually looking at ad hoc reports. Yeah. You're not looking at optimization or prediction sets. You're still looking at historic stuff, and you just want it summarized the way you like it. Yeah. So I think that's another big challenge. Yeah. So yeah, this is a series of challenges, from the supply pipelines to making sure there's a profiling and glossary, to making sure the data is actually cleansed and corrected and summarized accurately, to make sure that the reference data that you're using is still valid, and then on to AI models that they are productionized, they've been developed, they've been validated, and then adoption. So there's a whole series of challenges. So simple but not easy.
Yes, I agree with you. Even for the analytic application that I was trying to develop, we did 6 months of back testing of data to validate it. Then we launched it. Yeah. Mr. Chavla, what is your take on
Absolutely. I mean,
challenges?
6 months was a much lesser period, and I would say you would have been lucky if you would still able to bring out result out of it, because
We
from
got
all the places
very
where
good
the data
results.
is coming, and every business relies on that. Even yours, our businesses rely on that data itself, because we have to do analytics, and especially banking customers are there with banks for so many years, and many things, especially selling cross services. This data plays a very important role, and most of the points are already covered by Mr. Jory, and I would again thank him for covering all the points briefly. The other Another important aspect which I would like to add here is the discovery of the data, because what is there
I
in the
agree.
organization, and Mr. Jory has pointed out very correctly that the data which is there in the organization, people have used different names, and there are multiple copies which have been created of that particular data, and you never know where in the organization that data is getting utilized today. Hence, discovery of that particular data plays a very important role. And in our organization, we are trying to address this by identifying the data lying location of the data within the organization by using various discovery tools to see that what is lying where and how we can put them in one central place and bring out a meaningful result out of it. Another important aspect is the analytics, which we all are talking about. We know every business has a different requirement of analytics, and they generate different kind of reports to deliver value for the organization. Now, when they access the data, they keep it in a different name. As Mr. Jory has also mentioned, that same data would have multiple copies within the organization by used by various function and utilized in a different way. Putting a right structure to that kind of a data is also important, and that's where your governance model plays a very important role. You need to define, like I mentioned, for data privacy and protection, you need to define a framework. Similarly, what kind of data is there in the organization, you need to define a framework for that, which you may call it as an information classification, but or a different terminology which you would like to use within the organization function, and make sure that it is used across the organization by various function, should not change at any stage. There has to be a central repository of data. You may use the big data analytics or data lakes or various SaaS platform to put it a structure, but there has to be a central repository from where all the data has to be put out. Nobody else should have been allowed within the organization to create a different structure and keep their own repository of data to bring out result or analytics for their function. Because once you have a centralized repository, then only you can have a control on that, and that's how uh, we should be taking it forward and putting a right structure in place to ensure that data modernization becomes a success in an organization. Otherwise, it is continuing to be a challenge for an organization.
Yeah, well said. Data governance has its own challenge, and
So,
how do you discipline data? I remember in a bank when I used to work, we had split data for all parts of the architecture into confidentiality, integrity, availability for each part, and network components, and now the security is impacted. So that there is a centralized architecture of data. Uh, So we move on to how do we deal with legacy applications, because BFSI is full of that, but some of the legacy applications are wonderful. They give very good sturdy results, and they're very stable when it comes to usability. So, but at the same time, the demands of the customers are that they want data on the fly, and you want to modernize data. So, what are the tactical and strategic steps you would take to address legacy and modernize data and migrate data? My
Yeah.
question to the banker again.
Okay. So yeah, it's a in fact legacy. Certainly has a lot of negative connotations associated
It's
with
not.
it. And the tragedy is, let's say 20, 25 years ago, when we really set up, this entire information system at scale. Obviously, we had, the entire Intel server, the entire Oracle stack, and that was really cutting edge. Yeah, but that was 30 years ago. So what happens is, while it did that job extremely well, and therefore one should respect history, one should respect legacy for what it's done. The fact is that, obviously the expectations, especially, I mean, if you look at, what the big tech has done, Facebook, Google, Apple, kind of a set, obviously, the dimensions have actually changed. The battleground has actually changed, because we've had exponential increase in, storage, networking, and compute. So obviously things, which could not be even conceived 20, 25 years ago, can now be very easily done. I mean, and then you have the new paradigms. You suddenly have mathematical algorithms that did not work because they did not have enough computing to back them up. Suddenly they start working now. You could not actually look at outsourced data centers, and suddenly cloud computing is a thing. And then you have flash storage, and permanent storage, and then you have new architectural paradigms as well. Yeah, I mean, the entire command queries, segregation, kind of a set, new patterns in which APIs can be written, event hubs, where streaming data can actually be as close to real time as it's possible. Yeah. So, how do you deal with legacy? I think there are two things that I would look at. The first one is strip away that monolith into separate constitutional blocks, and one would say that there are at least five. Yeah. The first one is really the systems of engagement. Your CRM, your browsers, your apps, your APIs, which are then federated out to various big tech. So that's one stack. Yeah, systems of engagement. That's what customers see. That's what customers experience. Yeah. Then there is this entire set which is systems of intelligence, and which is where the data lives and resides. That's really the brain. Uh, then you have systems of records, which is where all your ledgers, your accounting, your payments, stuff is there, and that's a place where you don't follow, break things and move fast, kind of a say, because we are in a, whether we like it or not, in a fiduciary, kind of a responsibility. We are that kind of an industry where there's a lot of sanctity to just making sure that your books are balanced, that there's not a record out of place, so that's systems of records. Yeah. And then you have two more new sets coming up. One is, I would say, system of things, which is where your entire 5G and IoT world is going to come. Is almost everything will have intelligence embedded in it, but it's closer to the edge than to the core. So it's pretty much at the periphery. So there's a lot of intelligence at the periphery, whether it's connected cars or connected ATMs or even your credit cards, even the plastics that you carry, because then that gets embedded into the phone. So then you certainly have a whole host of system of things, which should be stripped out. And then you have the entire ecosystem and orchestration pieces. Yeah, how do you reach out to various people? So I think the first step towards addressing legacy is to say that there were actually five sets of things there. And, the classic old legacy was actually can be relegated to just one thing, which is the system of record. Yeah, keep it there, because you will get some continuity, give it some more time, for you to modernize that piece. But the rest of the stuff, your systems of intelligence, systems of orchestration, systems of engagement, and system of things, make sure that it is on the latest, the best, the fastest, kind of a set. And what that truly means is that you start hollowing out the core. I mean, it's a term that we're using internally, which says that earlier the core used to do everything. Core was the tech. Yeah, you had one big black box that was in a data center which was cooled and had green lights flashing all over. Now suddenly IT is there everywhere. It's all pervasive. So keep the system of record. Continue keeping that on the legacy if that's working for you. Buy yourself time to just modernize that piece, but modernize the others first, and you will get some runs on the board. Yeah, but ultimately there is no going away from modernizing the core itself. And now there are enough and more alternatives that are available where you can actually very, very systematically go and strip that piece out. Yeah. So that's I think the approach that we are following. Is hollow out the core, modernize the rest of the sets, get some quick wins, and then use that to fund the entire migration of the core out. Yeah. And that gives you speed and stability. Yeah. And the question is really, you don't have to choose between the two. You can actually get both. It's just that your overall speed of modernizing the entire stack end to end increases a little, but that comes with actually just making sure your customers continue to have a delightful experience.
When you say modernize core, what do you exactly mean by that? Yeah.
Yeah. So there again, I mean, 2-3 paradigms. Right now it's a monolith. Yeah. I mean, your scripts and your databases. Yeah. And that comes with its own concomitant, problems of scaling. Yeah. You can't horizontally or vertically scale, that kind of stuff. And all of us are reaching those limits very, very fast. I mean, some of our competitors actually just fell by the wayside because they did not do stuff, enough in advance. And the results are there for all to see in the public. Yeah. we were smart enough to actually just start to do that even before we were forced to do that, with the back against the wall. So it comes to two, three paradigms. One is that it should be on a cloud. Now, why should it be on a cloud? Is that permits scaling, on demand. Yeah, and that's a very big deal, because the spikes that you see when the entire set of processes get digitized, and we've seen this with payments with UPI. Very soon we will see it with almost all banking products when account aggregators takes root. Yeah. So that's very, very important, is that you can scale on demand. What also comes with it is that you can heal. It's self-healing. Yeah, is that if it senses that there is an issue, it sounds an alarm and then starts scaling very, very gracefully. Yeah, so it's self-healing, it's elastic. And I mean, that also means that just by moving stuff onto the cloud won't do that. Your programs have to be written to natively use all the capabilities of the cloud. Yeah, so that's what I mean by modernization. Is you got to write the application, rewrite the applications, using new technology, which is new ways in which APIs are written, new ways in which containers are there, and new ways in which the entire uh, stuff operates in a serverless, kind of an environment. Yeah. Now, but to do that in the core needs a lot of depth, needs a lot of engineering, needs a lot of skill upgrade. Yeah. Which you would want to pursue very, very urgently. But my sense is, yeah, I mean, look at it in a 3 to 5 year kind of a sense. This should be possible. But do not stop, the customer engagement and the intelligence piece. Yeah, that can start right away. You don't need to relegate that to the core.
Understand. So tactical and strategic steps.
Yes.
Excellent.
Absolutely, it is very much important as well, because when you have legacy system in the environment, it so there are two kind of challenges you are dealing with. One is the internal challenges, because you have a legacy system which cannot integrate with multiple system within the organization. Second is the along with that particular challenge, you have a pressure of upgrading it to meet the new modernization requirement, as Mr. Chori has mentioned. Second is the customer experience, because you do not want to compromise on the customer experience. Now, if that legacy system is interacting with your public facing infrastructure, or public facing resources, or through which you are servicing your customer, it becomes a much more challenging task to ensure that whenever you are planning to migrate it to a new platform or upgrade it to a new solution to service your organization in much better way and your customers in much better way, there has to be a proper planning need to be taken in place to ensure the experience should not go down, because the way things are changing, the way things are modernizing, the way things are enhancing today with new technologies, new APIs, new connectors, new kind of environments which are available, on which you can host the infrastructure, the kind of experience user is expecting. It is no more a legacy system. Like if I tell you, let's take an example of in a banking. We used to go to bank to update our passbook. Does it require today? No, it doesn't, because everybody gets it over the email. Similarly, in life insurance as well, there was a policy which used to get delivered or need to be submitted while claiming an amount. Now it is all digitized. The policies get delivered over the email. You just have to submit few documents which are required, and that can also be done over the email if the documents are authenticated, validated, and things are done. Most of the services can be catered over the through digitization itself, and especially this COVID thing. COVID has taught us many things and have modernized many platforms. The way we were servicing our customer, things have changed drastically since 2020, right? And it is going to be the future as well. uh, Taking a classic another example of people being physically available in the office, that is not no more a requirement now.
Yeah.
Most of the people are working from home. I mean, I have not been to my office since uh, 13 March 2020, right? That was the last day I visited, and still we are in a people, most of the people are still working from home. So that's how things are enhancing, things are changing. And similarly, to cater all these requirements, you have to enhance your systems as well, which are there in the organization. Now, coming back to the legacy system again, like Mr. Jory has mentioned, it has to be prioritized. It needs to be defined. It's a thought through process. It itself is a project which needs to be taken separately and and discussed internally by looking at by coordinating with various function, understanding the business needs, understanding the customer requirements, how it will help us out in addressing certain challenges, the kind of APIs which are available, especially your supply chain when you are integrating it with multiple partners, how that will be taken care, whether they are capable enough to integrate, adopt the new APIs or new technologies which you are bringing in. Because you yourself is not upgrading, it is your partners who need to upgrade themselves as well to service you, right? So all these aspects needs to be taken care. That will be my submissions, Krishnji.
And how do you handle cloud? Do you see cloud as an important change and from transforming legacy to the modern world? Mr. Chawla.
Absolutely, cloud plays a very important role. Now, again, it depends. There are certain systems which organization uses which can't be migrated to cloud because there is no that platform is not upgraded to the cloud. But obviously, there are alternatives available. And I can give an example of a way of working we have been adopted since 2020. Most of the organization, I don't feel that any organization is left who has not touched the cloud environment now. Either one of the services there on the cloud, or they are in a planning of migrate everything onto the cloud. So that's the cloud is going to be the future. It is going to play a very important role, and people today or tomorrow have to adopt it 100%. Not there are the various reasons behind it, because when you have a legacy system, when you have a physical environment, there are many other components which needs to take care, where those have been already taken care in the cloud environment itself, right? You don't have to worry about patches, you don't have to worry about security bugs, because they will all anyways be taken care by the OEMs. There are various other benefits which you will get: availability, reliability, user experience. All these are the added components which you get when you move your infrastructure onto the cloud. Now, because being a CISO, I can't leave it without touching the security piece as well, because that's my bread and butter. So security plays a very important role, and I would like to call it here, because if you are migrating some to the cloud, don't think that cloud infrastructure provider will take care of your security as well. Security is something which you need to define, you need to architect, and you need to maintain for your cloud infrastructure. That's a perception I still hear in many forums. People believe that if they move on to the cloud, security is anyways taken care. They don't need to put security parameter, or they don't need to worry about security. No, it is still a worrisome point. It is still need to be taken care, and you yourself will be responsible of your environment to secure it, to ensure there are no leakages, no threats available in your environment which you have built onto the cloud.
How do you deal with data leakages when you migrate data to cloud and other area? This to Mr.
Absolutely.
Chawla. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a very important thing, and that is the reason I said that when you are migrating, the planning plays a very important role. You need to architect your cloud infrastructure in a way where you identify the loopholes and take care of that. In that particular aspect, when we talked about in the first question about data privacy, data protection, the framework plays a very important role, because data leakage can happen from anywhere. Even today, if you look at it, most of the data leakages which we are talking about happens generally from your supply chain. So you are as secure as your partners today. If if you have built walls across your around your castle, that doesn't mean that you are secure, because the data is still moving out, people are still moving out, people are still using the data in a multiple platforms. So there are various controls which you can put. Now I will start from the end user perspective. Now the parameter has changed. If I talk about security, because when we were in the environment, it was a closed environment. The firewall, your office firewall, was the first parameter, then router, switches, and other security controls which you have put within the environment, right? Now the parameter has changed. It is the user laptop, desktop, which he or she has been assigned, and they are using from home, has become your parameter. Now various controls has to need to be put in on the user. I will start from the user first machine before you move on to the cloud, because you can host your infrastructure onto the cloud, you can use your SaaS services, because all the data is being accessed using the machine. So first you need to protect your machine, restrict the internet access, put a DLP, data leak loss prevention tool, put encryption, put EDR to learn the analysis, how what user is doing, what your employee is accessing, what they are downloading, how they are using their machine, how effectively the machine is behaving, is there a malware on the machine. So all these analysis will come from your EDR. Now when we move on to the cloud environment, that doesn't if it is on cloud, that doesn't mean that it is secure. You still have to put your firewall in place. You still need to ensure the patches are updated. You still need to ensure there are security controls which have been put in. There are EDR or security gates built in within the environment itself to make it difficult for hacker to get into your environment. And the most important piece is you need to adopt a framework of need to know. Again, I'm going back to my point when I talked about data classification and providing access to the user. You need to restrict access to your environment to users who only need it. Don't give it an open internet access. It used to be a case when we were working in a closed environment in the office. People have not put that kind of a control. But when you move on to the cloud, that is not the piece you are talking about. It is not only about the data. It also applies when you are building an application as well. You need to build various security gates before putting anything onto the production. So the good practice is to put at least two security gate, one at the time of UAT, and second before you push it onto the production environment, to ensure that there are no leakages, no open points through which a leakage can happen. So that's how you need to define your cybersecurity framework, and it has to be resilient enough to cater to the future attacks.
Great. How do you address data privacy, and especially with the again, this is to Mr. Chavla, especially with reference to the new bill and the act that's going to come.
Uh, uh, in various forums, I have talked about it, and we honestly, I'm still waiting for the final bill to come, because there have been amendments which have been made. There are new clauses which have been added, so it will be too early to comment on that. But yes, the way it is coming, it is not. It is going to be little different from GDPR, but most of the components are already we know, because GDPR is in place for almost 5 years now. So things have been adopted, things have been understood by the organization, and most of the controls are already put in place. How we should address it is what I talked about in the second point when I talked about the data privacy framework. The organization need to have a data privacy framework where you need to first identify the data, as Mr. Jory has mentioned, that you need to structure the data correctly. If you don't structure the data correctly, yeah, the privacy and protection is going to be a concern, and you will not be able to address it till the time you know what is there in the organization, how where it is kept, who is accessing it, and how. And that is how post you have all the details, then you can only put a control of in order to protect that data out. Need to know basis is the first principle you should put in the organization. People should not be given access to the data until and unless they require it to do their job function. Second, you need to put a timeline to a particular data for which it has been accessed, or for what it need to be kept for a particular purpose. After that, it needs to be removed. So DRM plays a very important role here. That's another component which you can look at it. Though it is not an economical solution, it's an expensive solution. Let me highlight that as well. But that's something which needs to be adopted to put a control there, and that's post all these controls only. You will be able to protect privacy and protection of your customer.
The other challenge in privacy is getting consent from the customers and also informing the customers at each stage. I don't think traditional forms or app forms address this. You need to modernize that. How do you handle
I
the
completely agree
modernization
with
of?
you. I completely agree with you. And so, if you look at it, there are many studies which have been published. India is known for vomiting data. And there is no harm in saying. I mean, I can openly discuss and debate about it. You go to you go everywhere. You vomit your data, right? If somebody you go to Big Bazaar, you go to any shopping mall, they will ask you for certain data. Recently, I went to a mall, and they asked me to put an entry in the register for what? I don't know. They were just tracking that who has visited the more than whether they have been vaccinated or not. But why would I tell you that whether I have been vaccinated or not, right? There is a Aragya Setu app, you see it there and then close it out, right? But no, these are the things which have been put in place. And I see that many people have given that kind of their data, their name, phone number. Some people have put their address and their status, whether they have been vaccinated or not. But why do malls have to collect that data? Similarly, when you go to shopping mall, there is a free holiday you get. You fill up the form very happily, in which you provide your date of birth and your marriage anniversary as well. And they keep on calling you, bugging you at that point of time. So India is known for vomiting data. It will never be addressed 100%. But yes, taking a consent plays a very important role, which needs to be addressed. And honestly, I mean, so far, we have been able to do it to whatever extent we could by defining a privacy policy for our customers. Now, every organization has a privacy policy. You also have it, and we also have it, which is hosted on our website. So the practice which we follow is we keep on learning every year, and we keep on updating that privacy policy every year, which is there on the website. And that's how you need to upgrade yourself with the need of the customer and need of the and marrying it with the need of the organization. Keep your customer informed, uh, keep them appraised that for what purposes you will be utilizing the data. Be transparent to your customers, and then in that way only you will be able to address the privacy issue.
Correct. Yeah, thanks. Now, my question to Mr. Banker is on the customer experience and data migration. How do you define of today and the experience that the customer wants, and then how do you address the data challenges towards addressing the needs?
Okay. Okay. So I think with customer experience, I mean, I think it's foundational, and I think big tech pretty much has shown us the way that that's a clear differentiator. Uh, so the first thing is actually very rigorously define customer experience. What is a good experience? And I would say it's actually three E's. Yeah. The first thing is that it should be easy. Whatever the customers does. I mean, and BFSI sometimes gets more complex than it needs to be. So it should be a very, very easy experience. Yeah? The second one is that it should be effective. I mean, customers started off on a journey to do something. At the end of the journey, easy journey, it should actually do what it was intended to do. Yeah, so it should be effective. And the third one is it should actually result in a good emotion. Yeah, you should feel good about doing whatever you've done. You bought a life insurance, you are a responsible person. You've saved something, you are a prudent person. So all of these are very, very positive, kind of emotions. Yeah. So you need to have all three of them. And while it's straightforward, it's not very, very simple to execute. Yeah. All of them actually need a lot of data that backs it up. Yeah. And let's start with the easy piece. Yeah. I mean, what is the kind of data that you need to make it easy? Yeah. The first one is you need to know the context of the customer. Yeah. Is he on a phone? Is he on a browser? Is he, across a counter? Is he in the place where he normally stays, or is he, out somewhere? Does he have time to execute what he is wanting to do, or is he in an emergency? Yeah? Now, all of these things are not straightforward to capture and deliver at the point where the transaction is actually being done. Yeah? So this needs a lot of data. So now, how do you get all of this stuff done? Is again, like I said, you have systems of experience, your browser, your app, your CRM, and the federated sets, that you use to integrate with other ecosystems. You got to make that very, very easy. Effective emotions actually lies there. Yeah. But the delivery of a lot of intelligence to that set comes from your systems of intelligence. Yeah. That's where your customer profile is. And sometimes, you don't even need to be a customer. You could just be a prospect. Yeah. But the dimension of your phone and the operating system of your phone gives a lot of clue about, what kind of status of strata of society you belong to, and therefore what is the kind of appropriate things that you want to serve at that point in time. Yeah. So that needs a lot of intelligence. So customer 360, prospect 360, and then there are models. Some of them are fairly straightforward business rule engines. The guy is a good credit. He has a history of dealing with us before. Therefore, this. Yeah. And some of it is actually just mathematical, machine learning models. especially relating to credit or underwriting, where you can actually glean and use a lot of historic data to arrive at the precise recommendation. So recommendation is one set. Risk prevention, fraud prevention is another set. Where you use a lot of data. But what that means is a tango between two systems. Yeah, one is your systems of experience, like I mentioned, browser, apps, CRM, federated APIs, and your systems of intelligence. So raw data, cleansed data, metadata, AI models, and a delivery with an appropriate degree of accuracy and speed. Yeah. So that's what's needed to give a good experience. I think we are at the beginning of this journey. And talking about journeys, I mean, the other stuff is put an anthropological lens to what a journey can be, what a journey ought to be. What are the problems that the customer is wanting to solve? How is a housewife's journey different from a student's journey, different from a merchant's journey? Yeah, they're all individuals. So there is a little bit of thinking that actually needs to go on to that. And finally, then there is this entire UX and UI interfaces, polished aesthetics, fast response, simple to understand, error preventions, wherever it is possible, predetermined data filled in to, reduce cognitive load, those kind of disciplines then come into place. Yeah. So a lot of thinking other than just technology that needs to, come on to what is then qualified as a good experience.
What about data migration? How do you migrate old traditional data to the modern sphere?
Yeah, I mean, see, a part of the stuff is actually just getting the right supply pipelines and actually just validating that data, and that needs a program kind of an effort before systems actually go live. So there is a little bit of thinking through profiling and glossary and meta tags, and then there is an act of actually pulling in data and actually putting it to the right place. Yeah. Again, ICICI Bank's been doing it for quite some time. So we had a monolithic data warehouse, which continues to stand us in very, very good stead. So to that extent, it's not been that difficult for us because our supply pipelines for already updating structured data warehouses. It's just that there is a lot of real-time streaming data that needs to come along, and then there are a lot of business models, ML ones included, other than just BREs, which needs to come together to deliver the right sets. So it's been a work in progress. So it's not a 0-1 that we did not have any data and suddenly we have data. It's been a journey of continuing to refine the logic of the BREs, continue to refine the ML, and make sure that our supply pipelines can actually provide more data. For example, let's say you already had the customer's addresses, yeah. So you know his home location, you know his office location. The app could stream in a location with customer's permission and actually give us the context absolutely right. Yeah. So it's not that we did not know a location. Now we can just very precisely derive a location with a view to just serve that customer better. Yeah. That's what it means. So migration is not a one-off thing. I mean, you progressively just keep getting better at it.
What about channel integration? In the sense that when customer wants something, the customer is told this is somebody else and some other company that handles, or some other app, and then you have to again go back, and customer is so irritated. How do
Yeah.
you handle
So
that? Yeah.
the two things here. The first one is that it has to be a truly omni-channel, yeah, which means that all the functionalities are available in all the channels in the exact same sequence as they are there broadly. Obviously, channels have differences. An app can do a lot more than what a browser can do, and a CRM can do a lot more because it's employee facing and the customers pretty much across the counter. So that there is a lot more bandwidth available to do cross selling, upselling, or just understanding the service issue better. Yeah. So the first one is actually just orchestrate the journey so that it is similar across the board, and that needs an architecture. And by an architecture, mean that pretty much every API that you write, which actually carries the logic and the functionality over to the appropriate piece of glass. The piece of glass could be an app, browser, or a CRM. It is consistent in the journey, so that customer, even when he encounters an app and then goes over to a bank branch, he sees exactly the same sequence. Yeah, that's point one. The point two is each channel should be aware of where the previous channel was left off. Yeah, so that there is, if I had filled the form halfway through and I want to just complete the journey in some other place, I should not have to start from all over again. There is intelligence to just make sure that that piece of information is stored and available, obviously for a period of time, appropriate period of time, and then just moves forward. And especially if you're an existing customer, then a lot of data is pretty much anyway known. All of it should be born to the surface, so that the customer actually has an easier time. For example, if you already underwritten the customer for a credit card, you should not be asking for all of the stuff all over again. And this has been one of our key endeavors, is that we will ask data just once. And actually, so whether it's a mortgage loan or an auto loan or a credit card, we should not be asking for the same set of data over and over again. Yeah. And this needs your systems of intelligence. This is where the data and all the BREs are, and your systems of engagement to be acting in close concert.
Great, thanks. In fact, analysis has shown that 60% of data is only used when we collect the data at the application stage. 60 to 65. The rest of the data goes waste. But then, of course, analytics later would try and orchestrate that. Yeah, my question to Mr. Chawla is on the data migration. What kind of audits, tests, security checks you would do on data migration?
Again, I mean, see, it itself is a big project. I mean, the kind of data we are dealing with, there is legacy data. The data is still in an unstructured format. What has been shared earlier may not have been asked today, or what is asked today may not have been asked earlier. So there are all these things needs to be looked at, because the way insurance company works is, or the way it has been improvised over a period of time, what was requested, what we used to submit at earlier, initially when we used to buy a policy is completely different today. The migration itself is like I said, is a project. It's a thought through process. It should start from so you should start once you have the structure in place, you should start accepting data as on today, and then start looking at backward of what you have in place, and then start migrating old data into the new platform to make sure that it gives you meaningful results, and and tells business that what they should be eyeing and what should be looking at, and how they should be targeting their customer to cross sell and service their customers as well. Security challenges are remains the same. They are not going to be different. So data we don't know. Yeah, you will not know that in which form it has been lying where. So data discovery is the first aspect which needs to be looked at while planning the migration of data onto a new platform, or while adopting a new platform to migrate the old data. Either way around, you use the terminology. The discovery has to be taken as the first step. Then structuring the data is the second step. You put the right structure, what is needed as per the today's business need, and then build on certain parameters to cater some of the future known needs. I would not say unknown needs, because you that is something which can't be predicted and you may not know. Keep as the journey is changing, there may be changes which will happen in the business, and similarly in the customer journey as well for the organization and for the customer as well, when you service them by providing certain details onto the platform. So that needs to be taken care. Third, again a framework needs to be built in through which you provide access. So obviously when you provide access internally, that's not the same privilege you give to your customer. So what all can be catered through website to the customer, or through application to a customer, are going to be different from your internal employees, what they should access. And similarly, for the application team, how they are building and how they are developing the application. The security gates has to be built in, like I recommended earlier. That plays a very important role, because until and unless you have those security gates, you will not be able to put security into the parameter. Second and fourth piece is the rigorous checking and compliance needs to be in place, because these, when you are defining a policy or defining a procedure, that need to be audited regularly. And I strongly recommend to ensure that it is the process which you have defined working efficiently. You should at least audit it once in a year. to look at the areas which requires improvement and improvise basis the findings you will get out of that particular audit. So that's how you should be building your security while or working towards the data migration.
The data migration audits also by external person. Do
Absolutely.
you
It could be internal, it could be external. That again depends because regulator does not say that you should do that
external?
external audit, but yeah, an internal audit definitely needs to be done. Now you can have a third party who does an audit for you. Can be called an internal audit, and you can take an external audit, completely a third party view
Sure,
from
great.
outside.
So with that, we come to the close to the end of the panel. Just to sum up, I think you have anything to sum up, Mr. Jory and Mr. Chawla? You want to do any summing up remarks?
No. I think it's important. Like I mentioned, I mean, the paradigm is changing away from application as the first citizen to data as the first citizen. And that paradigm is very very foundational. Yeah. So you need to just take it away from there. And as the saying goes, a lot of people say data is the new oil. I would say data is the new uranium. Yeah, because it can be radioactive if you don't use it well.
Okay,
You don't need to get to another Chernobyl to actually figure out how not to use data. So I think it's important to make sure all the architectural components are put in right. I think it's important to secure it well, and it's also important to just make sure that when you're modernizing it, do it in steps, especially in the industry that we are in. I think it's important to do it, and ultimately it's about customer effectiveness, ease and emotion, and that's what we're all here for.
great. Mr.
True.
Chawla?
Yeah, like data is definitely the new fuel for the for any organization today, and most of the unicorns which we see today, or the startups which are becoming unicorn, are relying on the data itself with new customer acquisition and building a base. Now, it has its positive and negative. Without naming the organization, we all know there is the positive side and negative side. There is a big organization which has become multi-billion-dollar with the amount of data they have collected over a period. Now that is impacting them, and their value is coming down, right? Because the people have realized that how they have utilized the data in an inefficient way and breaching their trust. Now, it like I said, it has both positive and negative, and that would be my submission, to ensure that when you are collecting the data, it has to be used in a correct way, in a right form, and bringing in transparency into the system, telling your customer for what their data will be used.
Great. So, and most customers today demand a good experience, and especially on the data handled by the company it deals with, and they get
True.
irritated if they are taken iteratively across channels.
Yeah.
So, with that, we end the panel. I would like to hand over the session to Mr. Gulati.
Thank you so much, sir. And we already feel a lot enlightened with such experts talking about every. I don't think that we have left any point that could have been covered in this amazing panel. It has been such an eye opener where we've been talking right from handling the data in the correct format to and then definitely I agree with Pawan sir when he said that we vomit data and we try to collect as much data as possible without realizing the utilization of it, and I think that becomes again one of the major factor uh, where we are when it comes down to the utilization of for the same. Uh, we being a small organization, we realize that how important the data is to get to get all these components that we call as an event to come together. We understand the nitty-gritties of every NBFCs, which is handling numbers in such a huge quantity to modernize the data in the correct format. Thank you so much. It has been such an eye-opener session for all the viewers, all the listeners of Universal Mentors Association. I would once again like to thank Mr. S.V. Sundakrishnan, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay, sir, for joining us, and thank you, Pawan, sir, for giving us really good insights on this amazing panel. It has been a pleasure having you on board, and we hope to keep you on board through our next events that we'll be planning in the future as well. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Anyway,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.